everybody, to the Grynd Lyfe podcast and YouTube show. This is Don Martin, your host, and I'm extremely excited about today's guest because today's guest and I have had a few conversations here. It's been fun. It's been enlightening, but I've admired this man for a long time before we've had a chance to officially meet. So let me give you a little background about our guest today. His name is Mr. Thomas Power. He is located in London, England. And we're going to talk, our topic today, by the way, is how to find security in an unstable world. So this is going to be an exciting and interesting conversation we have today. But Mr. Thomas Power is an author of 8 books. He is a international public speaker. He's spoken to large crowds in over 56 countries. He's a board member and director of 5 companies. He is an expert in the world of technology and has been online for over 30 years. One of the cool things is he actually started a company called Academy, very successful social media type company before. And I always tell people my interpretation of it was like the LinkedIn combined with the Facebook world before LinkedIn was even around. He had over 650,000 members of Academy before he sold that company. He has hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter. And one of the things I'm going to ask him about later is one of the topics that I researched a little bit about on him called tokenomics, which I'm kind of intrigued to talk about a little bit going forward. But nonetheless, Mr. Power, thanks for being on, Thomas. Appreciate you being here, buddy.
Don, that's a very generous welcome, and thank you for inviting me on your show. I'm honored and touched.
I appreciate you being on, man. So before we get started here and kind of dive into the topic that you and I came up with together, which I love, called how to find security or safety in an unstable world, which we know right now it's a little, there's some stability challenges that a lot of people are having in this world with the pandemic and elections going on all over the place and all kinds of different things. But tell us about your background. Obviously, you have some a great bio here and a lot of neat experiences. Tell us about your background. Where were you born and raised, and kind of what molded you as you kind of grew up?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was born in a little place called Solihull, part of Birmingham, in the Midlands of the UK. My father moved down to Surrey. And he had a post office. He was a postmaster. So I grew up above a shop. My mum had a clothes shop next door to the post office. So I kind of lived above the shop and observed retailing to the public from the age of 5 years old. And so I guess I've been in business observing them since I was 5. I'm now 56. So more than 50 years, if you like. I worked in the post office. I worked in my mum's shop. And then I guess the other big influence on my life was joining the Cub Scouts and the Scouts and the Air Cadets. I really liked the discipline, the outdoors, the adventures. I'm a big fan of nature and the mountains and forests. I'm a big fan of flying and piloting. And so I would say Cubs, Scouts, Venture Scouts, Air Cadets were very influential on my life.
Love it.
I had a reasonably good career playing tennis. I played lots of tennis across the country, did quite well at that. Wasn't quite good for the big league, good enough for the big league, but I still had great fun playing it. And then really towards my late teens, early 20s, I broke into the sort of technology industry, marketing, advertising, assembling hard disk for Apple IIes, and got hooked on the world of hard disks, microprocessors, motherboards, assembling computers. And then I got a break working for a UK billionaire called Alan Sugar, who runs The Apprentice, like your President Donald Trump used to run The Apprentice. Alan Sugar is the equivalent. He became Sir Alan Sugar and is now Lord Sugar. And I worked very closely with him for a few years. And that's where I met, through him, being in his network and being in his club, if you like, I met people like Bill Gates. I met Michael Dell, Steve Ballmer, Ross Perot, Rupert Murdoch, through him, being close to him. And that's where I sort of fell in love with building networks, building communities, connecting people, helping people find the connections they're looking for, and started to realize that everyone in the world, at least in business, is looking for information, is looking for contacts, is looking for deals. And so I started building my reputation around connecting people for information, connecting people to the right contacts, finding the right people, and helping people find the right careers and deals that they were seeking. And then my wife had this idea of, why don't we take this whole thing online? Academy was born in 1998, and boom, there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, there was no LinkedIn. We ended up with 650,000 members, and it just exploded our reputations. And we still have this network of followers all over the world on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Thousands of people on WhatsApp message me. Literally do get 1,000 messages a day on WhatsApp. Love it. Answer them all, and have been connecting people now for more than 25 years.
Well, firstly, I want to acknowledge you and thank you for responding when I reached out, because I've actually, it was interesting enough. When I first came to start, I'm born and raised in Pennsylvania, United States, and I decided to start expanding a business that I have had here since 1999, but it was in, I think, 2013 or so that I started to grow and expand over into the UK, and have had a lot of fun. I love it. Met some of my favorite people in the world that are there in the UK. I love the British, sense of humor. It's just so much fun. And some of my best friends are there now. And but I actually followed you in 2013, and I actually have some of your emails that were like, hey, thanks for the connection and this, that, and the other. And so I've just been connected, and it's just been because I admired what you did. And I want to thank you, first of all, for being what you say you are and communicating back with me when I reached out, and that's a really important thing. And you're not just saying that. I just want you to know that I acknowledge that you do that, and I want everybody to know that too, which is cool. So very cool, and thank you for that. When you were growing up, right, from an entrepreneurial space, right? Obviously, you were in your mom's shop with the post office, different things like that. What did you find? Was there certain instances there, or was just something that you feel that maybe it was just ingrained in you from an early age? Where did you feel that like business ownership kind of leadership started to stand out? Because do you think it was coming from your athletic background, or do you think it was more from your experiences growing up? Because here's what I found: many athletes that are competitive athletes, even if they don't go professional, but if they were competitive athletes for a certain period of life, a lot of times that transitions, that I've noticed, I see a big correlation to people that become successful business owners or successful entrepreneurs. Where do you think it kind of evolved for you?
I think you're right, Don. I think a lot of athletic sports people find business very appealing. Mm-hmm. Certainly many Wimbledon tennis players went on to become chief executives of major companies throughout the world, in France and in the UK. And I'm familiar with those, being in the tennis world with Wimbledon in the UK. But I would say that, using your word ingrained, I think if you observe your parents from the age of 5 hammering away in my mum's clothing retail store and my father's post office, when you see them working every hour trying to make ends meet and create a lifestyle for 4 kids, and I think it becomes ingrained in your skin, in your blood, in your DNA, that you must repeat that with your kids. And so I think I'm obviously very competitive from playing competitive tennis at a national level. Tennis is very, very hard at a national level. At an international level, it's virtually impossible unless you're in the Super League. But I think when you look at the complexity of business, I would say business is actually more complex than sport. And I think sport kind of prepares you, profiles you for business. But I think your childhood defines how you behave as an adult. And my parents were always, they're always trying to make a buck. They're always trying to make a dollar. They're always trying to improve the house, improve the lifestyle. They were God-fearing churchgoers. They're always trying to put the right food on the table. They were hardworking people. They were married for 35 years before my father died, and they were solid people. And so I think I like your word ingrained. I think it was ingrained in me from watching them to work hard, keep fit, eat well, and give your life to serving your family, be that your wife, your spouse, your children. But I live to serve, and I think both my mum and my dad were good networkers, good connectors in the town where we lived, and they liked connecting people. And so maybe I just picked that up. And I have an exceptionally good memory. I can easily remember names, numbers, facts, and information. Mm-hmm. And I do find it very easy to connect. If you say a key word, I can think of somebody in the Academy database, even though it's not there anymore. I can still see their profile. You say a keyword, I can think of someone on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, WhatsApp, just in my head, and know who to connect people to. I think it's a lucky skill. It might be autism, it might be Asperger's, but to connecting people is kind of in my psyche, in my DNA. And if it came through from my parents or sport, I'm not sure, but I find that everyone is looking for something. Yeah. They're either looking for a piece of information, they're looking for an insight, they're looking for a contact, they're looking for a connection, they're looking for a deal, they're looking for a job, they're trying to find something out. And I tend to know who to speak to find out that piece of information and make that connection. And particularly when you see, I'm a big fan of TweetDeck on Twitter, the streaming columns, which I think is vastly superior to anything on WhatsApp or LinkedIn or Facebook. But it is actually not very difficult to connect people once you get the key words. And I think humans connect based on key words. Mm-hmm. You were telling me about New Hope and Bucks County and Delaware River and Pennsylvania and the election and New York and Philadelphia. You mention all these words, and I relate to these words, therefore I relate to Don. Yeah. And most of networking, connecting, matchmaking, whatever label you want to give it, is about listening for keywords and connecting people. And I think I'm very fortunate that it's an innate skill, and my reputation around the world is ask Thomas. He's bound to know someone who can find you that deal or that career change or that role or that opportunity or that connection or that piece of information. It's a long answer to your question about what I was influenced by, but I think sport is a bedrock of life. But I think observing your parents slogging their guts out to feed you, educate you, clothe you is enough of a driver when you become an adult. I mean, I don't know what your experience is with your parents.
Yeah, for sure. I actually, and I agree, with you. I really think that athletics has a ton to do with it, especially to bring out that competitive spirit, that competitive edge that's necessary to be successful in business long term. I mean, anybody can get lucky. You and I both have met people that have got lucky short term, but it didn't follow them over the years, because it can happen. But to have consistent business success over and over, there needs be a few things. One thing is you have to be competitive, for sure. You have to be competitive, right?
Oh, Tom, don't get me wrong. I've had lots of failures.
Oh yeah. I'm going to ask you about some of those in a little bit.
Consistent business success seems very generous. No, I've had lots and lots of failures. And
I agree.
I think I've heard many people in North America say failure is the key to success. Many of those kind of psychology guru type speakers. And I think there's a lot to be said for if you want to double your success rate, you've got to double your failure rate. Mm-hmm. And I would say I've had one or two winners in about 30 companies. but I've had 28 average performances and failures to get those 1 or 2 winners.
I should say I should have rescheduled as consistent or repetitive. Instead of consistent, it should be, repetitive, meaning, hey, you've had more than one winner and you've had 6, but listen, you're right. And I'm with you that without a failure, success is that can't last. You need to have those failures, and that's kind of where you mold how to not make the mistakes again. I had an experience one time where in real estate, I got walloped a bit. I got hit really hard and a few $100,000. And by the way, feel free to use the term quid on this show, by the way, Thomas. It's fine.
I'm happy with dollars. I'm a big fan of the US dollar.
Yeah.
I like my Bitcoins. I like my Ethereum, but I do like my US dollar as well.
There you go. Especially lately. I mean, it was a good investment over the past 5-10 years, right? With the dollar. When I first came to the UK, the exchange rate was much different than it is today. So,
I think one of the things you hear in North America is the average millionaire or the average business person has been bust three times.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether that's true or that's just folklore. But what that's basically saying is you've got to do a lot of testing until you find your groove. And you have to try a lot of careers, a lot of niches, a lot of angles, a lot of stories. You can have a good product and a lousy team and do badly. You can have a lousy product and a good team and do well. Mm-hmm. So a lot is to do with the quality of the talent around you. And we've seen with companies like Apple, like Google, like Facebook, like Microsoft, like Netflix, unique bunches of talent who are well capitalized and well organized. Their performance is 100 times the average board member. And I'm now very fascinated that Apple's market cap is more than the whole of the UK top 100 companies.
Isn't that crazy?
And so you've got the 100 best board members in the UK. They've been to Oxford, they've been to Cambridge, they've been to the best schools, they should be part of the best networks. They probably come from the best performing families, and 100 boards can't beat one board at Apple. And I just find it incredible that Apple's performance can be 100 times effectively the whole of the UK top 100. So something special happens in America, and I think it's that acceptance of failure, move on, more testing, more R&D, let's go again, build another team, have another go with product. And just if we look at the way Satya Nadella has refreshed Microsoft in the last 6 years since he's been there, if we look at the skeptics about Facebook and look at what Mark Zuckerberg's achieved, and I think he's only 34 or 35, the thing that you have in the United States that mesmerizes me is you've got this ability to renew, recycle, rebuild, remake, re-go. And I think, back to your thing about ingrained, I think that's in the DNA of your ancestors. You're a nation of let's go again, let's remake it. And I'm a big fan of that. You don't see so much of that in Europe.
Yeah. One of the things about that too is a lot of the personalities that I've come across from the most successful people is the we call it the burn the bridges behind you mentality. Like you're going forward or else you die, you're going forward no matter what, and there's no turning back, that mentality of forward or nothing. So they burn the bridges behind you, or they burn the ships, hey, warrior, burn the ships. So, there's only one option, and that's to win, just to keep going, which is, it's a pretty, incredible mindset.
I actually know the history of this. I think it's General Wolfe in Canada about burning the boats. They had to win the battle because they burnt the boats. They couldn't go back, so they had to keep going. I'm pretty sure it's General Wolfe, but no doubt someone will correct me on the YouTube video in the comments below.
I'm sure.
I've got that wrong. But burning the bridges, burning the boats. I think I'll let you ask the next question, Don. I think we've run that one through.
I agree. And I appreciate that. It was awesome feedback. So from your aspect, and then we're going to get into the how to find safety, because I think it's a really intriguing topic and people want to hear. But just to wrap up this little background here, what's really intriguing to me about you is that you are a technology person, big time technology, but yet you also are about building communities again, and you understand the impact of the importance of connection, of people connecting and having that communication. Whereas most of the time, the people that I've connected with from all over the world, it's typically it's like one extreme or the other. And I find you very interestingly in the middle there, where you see the importance of both. What kind of had led you to that point? Because I think that's imperative of where we have to end up. I think you're way ahead of the majority of people that are in these two different worlds. And obviously it's because you blended it for a long time, but how did you get there? Like is it where do you find that kind of connection happening for you, or when did it start?
That's an amazing question, Don. I have to think about the answer to that question.
Sure.
I think the thing in business is mainly about the return on capital employed. You invest a certain amount of money, and shareholders are looking for a return on that money, on that capital, on that idea. And I understand that. I've sat on enough boards to understand that, both successfully and unsuccessfully. But I think when I look at, I'm a big fan of historical American entrepreneurs, Henry Ford, John D. Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan. I've read a lot of these biographies. And one of the things that John D. Rockefeller says in his letters is, when you take away all my wealth and when you take away all my assets, the only thing you're left with is your reputation. And your reputation lives on after you die, but your wealth and your assets often do not. And so I always think, what is the reputation I'd like to have after death?
Yeah.
And I'd like to have a reputation as being a connector and connecting people.
That's amazing.
And then I look at that and I think, well, that's what I would like, but that's a selfish act to have that desire. And then I look at companies, and I look at shareholders, and I look at suppliers, and I look at customers, and I look at employees, and I think, what you have here is different communities. Shareholders provide capital, employees provide labor and skills, customers provide capital to consume the product. And you can't build businesses without all these four constituents. But they're generally not that united in communities. And I've always felt that whether it's Mercedes-Benz or Apple or Coca-Cola or the local butcher, people are lonely and want to belong to small, intimate groups. They want to be part of something. It can be the shooting club, the hunting club, the farming club, the beer club, the Mercedes-Benz club. People like to belong to groups that they relate to, either because it's the topic, the skill, the product. And so I've always been thinking about, when I spend time with people, asking them what they're seeking. And people are often seeking capital to back their idea, or they're seeking talent to join their team, or they're seeking clients, or they're seeking the right supplier or the right shareholder. And I always think, people don't yet really know how to build groups and communities on Facebook, on WhatsApp. I have 100 WhatsApp groups.
Yeah.
People are not familiar yet with building groups and building communities. And so I think because we started Academy so young, we were babies really when we started at 33.
Yeah.
We got used to the idea that people like being part of a group because it you were less isolated, you were less lonely, you had more friendship in business. And business is a tough sport, so it's nice to have real friends in business.
Of course.
It's nice to be friends with your suppliers. It's nice to be friends with your shareholders and friends with your customers and friends with your employees and your recruits. And I think people like being part of something. And at the center of that is community building. And community building is often associated with church or with schools or the Parent Teachers Association or a charity or philanthropy. But I think community building is at the heart of business.
Yeah.
And I think every company is ultimately about building community, whether it's Apple or Microsoft or Nine Spokes in New Zealand or the Bit 100 Club that Penny and I are building. I think people want to be part of something, or it's your network, your shop.com network. It's a community. I think people want to be part of something which is more than the transaction, more than the money. Everyone needs money. Everyone needs transactions. Everyone has mortgages to pay, kids to feed. But if you can have all of that and belong to something that you enjoy, I just think we haven't yet got the skills through society of community building. And I think one of the downsides of social media is it's created a lot of anger, a lot of polarization, a lot of politicization, a lot of divisiveness, because we haven't really helped people build those communities. So there's been a lot of sort of anger and bashing and trolling at each other. And I think that's quite sad, but then you have to accept that people don't yet have community building skills taught to them. And I've been very fortunate, my wife Penny has been very fortunate that we have these skills, and we see technology as a lever to do it in a faster and easier way. But in the UK and across the world, our skills are quite rare, even now in 2020. And I like to think I could go into any community in the world and build a community, any community anywhere in the world, by making friends and administering a group on Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever platform was relevant in that community. But I do think these skills are still quite rare in society and in business, particularly online. And when you're building community online, you have to do it in a very gentle way, a very professional way. You can't do it fast. You can't rush it. You can't spam it. You can't bang it. And so communities tend to emerge gradually over time and then get strength from their emergence.
You know, one of the guys that is very similar to you, one of my biggest mentors in my life, J.R. Reidinger is his name, and and you were similar in that essence, where he actually said the one time, I never forget it, because you know a lot of things have emerged, especially now with you know COVID and social distancing and all, where people are being kind of spread apart more than ever. You know, he is and I am 1,000% believer that there's a blend in there somewhere that needs to be where, hey, you know, we need that technology to be able to give us the capacity. Like we're right now, we're on Zoom. We're talking from Pennsylvania to the UK, like we're sitting next to each other, which is pretty powerful. But the one thing he said is, he goes, you can digitize all you want, but people are still human beings and they need experiences and to feel a part of something, a community. And so I think what's really powerful, and I think that's a pretty good lead into our topic today, is that, because it's so important. Yes, we have the ability, the technology, and as people learn these skills of building an online community, right, and really feel a part of something, there still needs to be some some live human interaction. We're a herd species, I like to call it, where we like to be around people, and we do need that at moments. But technology can accelerate that opportunity, and also bridge a gap when it's not possible. And right now, we're in a season of life where it's just not possible to gather in the way that we once did, and hopefully that'll come back around too. Before we get into that, I have one question. You are also a coach, by the way. And I just want to bring this up because that was a really intriguing thing. So you coach and do some mentoring and stuff, and someone that has become extremely relevant in the space of personal development across the world, particularly a lot in America, but across the world, is a gentleman by the name of Jay Shetty. And I understand that you had a lot of time spent with him and did some chats and coaching and stuff like that. Can you give everybody a little rundown on how that happened and what you guys have done, if you wouldn't mind?
It's amazing, actually. He just sent me a message.
There you go.
On WhatsApp. Let me just answer that message to him. Yes, I mean he's a terrific young man. I met him in 2013. He was 26. And he was at Accenture. He was one of the Accenture analysts, consultants. And he asked me if I could help him sort of define his story and help him build up his skills and reputation online. And I said I would do that as part of I had a contract with Accenture to teach all their executives and their partners and managing directors for a number of years. And he was one of these up and comers.
Yeah.
And he was ambitious and he was hungry. And so, yeah, I've been supporting him and connecting him and mentoring him and coaching him, whatever label you want to give it, since 2013. And he's now number one on the New York Times bestseller list with Think Like a Monk. I think he sold 1 million copies. It's a bestseller worldwide. He has 6 million people following his podcast on Spotify and iTunes. And he's a terrific young man who has a lot of the content of Brian Tracy, of Tony Robbins, of Deepak Chopra, but up to date for the next generation, the millennials, the under 30s. He's got a massive following in North America, in Europe, in India. When I met him for breakfast in London, a couple of people walked over and said, could they have a selfie with him? Yeah. We bumped into someone on the tube who wanted a selfie with him. I think he has like 40 million followers now. I think what's interesting is when he describes me what he wanted to do with his content. He'd lived in a monastery for a number of years. When he described what he wanted to do, I said, if you want to get this message out there, you're going to have to make 1,000 videos and put this on every social media platform.
Yeah.
And it's got to be high quality production. And he just went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
And I said it, not thinking he would do it. 7 years later, here he is with 40 million followers and a fantastic business, a fantastic reputation, and to me, a real honor to know him, to mentor him. To me, he's like a protege, like my own children. But he understands community building, network building, building followers, building audience, getting the right content to people, using all the technology, leveraging all these social media platforms. So yeah, he's a young man I'm very, very proud of. I think he's now only 33, maybe 34.
And it's incredible to watch, and it's very powerful. That when you go through business, you'll come across people that you have a little influence over, and just to have a little piece of that story, just to be even a flicker of of the influence that kind of guided people. It's why people like yourself that are in the business of serving other people do what they do, and it's beautiful to see when it all comes together, when you line up your information with someone who is just a massive actions taker. Isn't that amazing? I just love it.
Yes, I think when you meet people, because I've met so many people, Don, literally face to face. I mean, I used to meet 1,000 members a year during the 14 years at the Academy. 1,000 people face to face, one to one. It's like
Yeah.
14,000 people over 14 years. It's a lot of people.
Sure.
You know how you can spot people? I remember meeting Michael Dell in 1987 at a conference, at a PC user conference. And Michael and I chatted for 4 hours, non-stop, walking around this conference at Olympia. And I'm a couple of months older than Michael. And I tweet Michael once a year to remind him of this event, right? And he can still remember what we talked about in June 1987.
Amazing, right?
And when you see talent like this, when you meet people like Alan Sugar or Michael Dell or Steve Ballmer or Jay Shetty, when you meet this very rare talent, you know it when you see it.
Yeah.
And when I listened to Jay all those years ago, I thought, this guy is really terrific. I had a similar experience with a young guy who introduced me to the internet, a Jazz Ahmed. He went on to build AKQA. He sold it to Martin Sorrell at WPP for $500 million, more than that in actual fact. And such talent, so young, and you just knew it. And I guess if you've been around a lot of millionaires and billionaires, supporting them, listening to them, being their gopher, if you like, making notes, sitting on private jets,
Yeah.
you sense the profile of high performance individuals, and I can spot that. And a lot of people message me on WhatsApp and say, "Can you make me into a Jay Shetty?" And I didn't make him into Jay Shetty. He was Jay Shetty.
That's right.
I just showed him a map of some of the routes to take. It's not me who made him. He had the talent already. It's just a case of just nudging here and there. I don't think coaching and mentoring is about telling you what to do. It's just about nudging you on things to consider.
Right.
And so with a Jazz, with Jay, with Michael Dell, I've met some incredible people in my career, but you can really sense this high performance individual when you meet them, when you've met so many. And because I've met so many people in now more than 60 countries around the world, I can sense talent literally in a click of a finger. And I just go, whoa, that's talent. I need to understand that person, get to know that person. And I don't know whether it's 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000, but I would say over a 40-year career, I've probably only met a couple of dozen of people like that in my life.
Yeah.
And so how many people do we meet in our lives? 10,000, 50,000, I don't know, but my gut feel says it's maybe 1 in 5 or 10,000 people like Jay Shetty.
Yeah.
And I chat to him every day on WhatsApp. I have done for the last 7 years. He's a super operator. I'm very proud to know him and support him and mentor him in any way he seeks.
And then the other side of the coin from the super talented is the ones that just never quit, and they're just persistent and tenacious as can be, and you'll never stop them. If you try to get in the way, they run you over. And that's, reminds me of some of the things, like for example, a Tom Brady, which is a lot of people will argue Tom Brady or Joe Montana. I think Tom Brady was the best quarterback ever in the history of the world, not because I was ever a fan of the Patriots or now, just because the guy's tenacity. Not a very talented guy, very subpar producer in the combines before, was a 6th round pick. All these other people chose in front of him, but his tenacity and his just competitiveness supersedes the talent, and he is just a champion in that. So intriguingly enough, you'll find people like that too, and sometimes they're the ones who, hey, they're the excellers of excel. For you, I have one more question that I wanted to ask you, because you said something that's really important for everybody to hear, especially right now, because in today's day and age, we're learning new worlds. We're learning new things. We're in the midst of what I like to call pivots. And people need to be able to pivot at certain times of their life and career in order to not only to thrive, but oftentimes survive, right? Just to stay on the track that they're at. I think one of the most important pivots happen during times of failure. So when you had your failures, what were some of the lessons that you learned about yourself or about that time that helped you grow as an individual and an entrepreneur and just a business leader during those moments that really have changed the trajectory of your business life and career?
Yeah, you ask great questions, Don.
Thank you.
You ask great questions. When you fail, you often are this, aren't you? You are depressed. And getting through a failure is very, very tough. But somebody showed me something once, and they said, it's not depressed, Thomas. It's actually deep rest.
Got it.
And so I think when you do hit the bottom, when you have these experiences like COVID is destroying lots of businesses around the world, everybody is realizing with events like COVID and no doubt other viruses to come in the future, that you do have to have a big presence online. You do have to have a business in the cloud. You do have to have a personal brand that people can relate to. You do have to be able to be found on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, WhatsApp, Instagram, wherever it might be. You've got to be found on all these platforms, and you've got to be able to transact and do business on all of these platforms worldwide, just to, as you say, pivot, thrive, and survive. Now, a lot of businesses can't necessarily do that, particularly if they're in the hospitality business, but they can, even in those businesses, figure out how to deliver their goods physically through apps or mobile or payment transactions online. So I think what COVID has probably done to the whole world, it's made people realize that I cannot ignore technology. I cannot ignore the cloud. I cannot not have a financial system in the cloud. I must be able to do all my invoicing and collect my capital electronically, all in the cloud. I've got to have a personal brand. I've got to be accessible to people on their preferred platform, be it Telegram, WhatsApp, iMessage, whatever people prefer. And I've got to be a quality brand online, so people want to consider me, myself, my products, my services. And I think everybody will now be thinking, I can't ignore this stuff anymore. Now, I never thought you could ignore it. And I'm sorry people have had to get hit with the COVID hammer to actually take action.
Right.
But I'm quite a positive person. And I think despite the tragedy of COVID and the deaths and the losses, which no doubt are going to continue a while before the world gets its herd immunity to this attack, is we've speeded up technology, we've speeded up the cloud, and we've probably increased the adoption of home working by a decade. And I think executives around the world, certainly at the organization where I'm a board member in New Zealand at Nine Spokes, people have seen that productivity has gone up with home working. And so performance has actually improved in a lot of companies. But we know isolation and loneliness and depression and mental health have now become a real issue for people.
Yeah.
And people are getting into their walking and their yoga and their meditation and their headspace and all these different things to try and sort out their mental health. But clearly, we now know that mental health is part of business, and so the depressed state, or the deep rest state that I've been through myself, I think is now becoming the norm. And I think when you go into a sad state, you've got to realize that it does take you quite a while to get through these states. For me, 18 months, 24 months can go by for me to come back, recycle, get a new idea. And to if you do get into a bad state after a business failure, seek professional help, work on your mind, work hard on your diet, your food, your exercise, remove any recreational activities, if you like nicotine and tobacco and alcohol and anything else that might pull you down. And to use your words, start preparing to pivot onto new things that you can thrive and survive. And I think when I look beyond next year, which I think is going to be a tough year as we absorb COVID and probably switch to herd immunity next year and the following year, I'm trying to look beyond these few years of hardship that everyone is in and think, what are the new positive business worlds that are beyond this? And hopefully, because people have been so isolated and lonely, now they will appreciate humans. They will appreciate meetings. They will appreciate events. They will appreciate conferences as a place to interact with humans. We're not robots. We're not designed to look at television screens for 10 to 12 hours a day. We're not. Maybe we will be robots in the future, but right now we're still human. And you and I are trying to give each other emotion through this screen, through our eyes, through our smiles, through our shirt, but humans are not designed to live in these digital boxes on screens forever. And I'm really hoping there'll be a return to more humanity, more empathy, more relationship, more intimacy in the boardroom and in companies worldwide on the other side of this pain of COVID, and that we'll actually see a better world for it. But we may be looking at 10 to 20 million deaths around the world before we can reach a true state of absorbing the virus, because no doubt Mother Earth will throw us another virus. We've got to get good at dealing with this stuff, and not every business lives in the cloud. We still like our restaurants, we still like our bars, we still like our cinemas, we still like our theaters, we still like our holidays, we still like our conferences, we still like our seminars, we still love our hotels, we love our venues, we love our trains, we love our planes. I think I'm trying to jump beyond where we are now, realize that we're in a very challenging society worldwide, and we're all in it, and think, how can I build community and connect people during these times so they're stronger and fitter and mentally tough for when we come through the other side of this dark tunnel for the world? I'm not sure that answers your question or not, Don.
It's very good. And one of the things that just hit me while you were talking about this, and I think it's a really important thing to say and point out, is that one of my absolute favorite people to listen to today is a gentleman by the name of Ed Milet. I think he has one of the largest, if not the largest, podcasts in the world now in terms of business-based podcasts. And he always says, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And I believe you 1000%. I believe that this challenging situation in our life is opening up our eyes to new opportunities that are going to improve humanity. No question. And it's just a matter of people being open to the change and to be able to pivot to get that way forward. So coming into...
I think you're right, Don. I think you're right. And right now we're trying to figure out what are these new things that our eyes are opening up to. Beyond things like electric cars and AI and climate change. I think we all know these are important things, but I think there's a human level that we're going to look forward to connecting, networking, sitting down, breaking bread, drinking wine, whatever it might be, worldwide, and have more respect for humans.
Yeah.
And
we're going to appreciate those things too when we come back together. It's going to be something that it's a missing element that when we get back together and we're back, in community, in life, where we can exchange energy in real person, and be able to be energized from other people. I think we're going to realize how great what we were missing during these last 6 months or a year, however long it ends up being, moving forward.
You are right. You've used the right words there, Don. You said exchange energy and energize. One of the things that humans do is we do give energy to one another, and we do receive energy from one another. And I think we're all missing that. And good as Zoom and Teams and Google Meet is, and these, you can't get energy through a computer screen.
Correct.
And we're sitting in front of these things for 10 or 12 hours a day, and even if you're a total addict, you wouldn't watch Netflix for 10 or 12 hours a day.
Right.
You just wouldn't. You might watch 4 or 5 shows, but we have to get back to, I think you called it right, this energy exchange of energizing one another. And I think in Star Trek, they used to say energize when they moved from the planet up to the spaceship and vice versa. Energize. And I think that's the bit that we're all missing. And that's where the challenges of isolation, of loneliness, of depression, of mental health can kick in, because we're missing that energy source. So you've got to get that from the forest, from cycling, from walking, from swimming, from something, so that your body is constantly renewing as it misses that human touch and energy. Very good.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. That's a great, and that actually answers the first question about this: how to find safety in this unstable world that we're in right now. You actually recommended me to watch a special on Netflix last week called The Social Dilemma, which I did, and it messed me up. Now I got to tell you, like it really got in my head. But and here's why: I already knew it. Like the majority. I mean, I understood the majority of things that were going on and how it has evolved down this almost like black hole, but there's also a benefit, to those things. But so in this unstable world, and I encourage everybody to watch that, by the way. It kind of gives you, well, can you give us your opinion of that, by the way? I mean, you obviously recommended it to me. Why did you, first of all, tell me why you did recommend me that. What was the enlightening part about that? But what did you take from it that we can turn into a positive from that particular documentary on Netflix? Everybody, it's called The Social Dilemma.
Okay, so a number of different things. The first thing to really understand from that show, and this has been talked about for 20 years,
sure,
but that attention is the product.
Yeah. And
I keep saying this. I heard it first in the Netherlands in 2004 from Juan Wapiris, a Dutch psychologist there. But attention is the product. Our attention now is the product. Yeah. And if you like, we're trading in attention on these social platforms, on podcasts, on your YouTube show here now. The first thing is to recognize our attention is the product, and what price we put on our attention. So that's the first thing, to really get the context on that. The other thing to recognize, that social media is addictive. It releases dopamine and serotonin just like cocaine does, just like exercise does. It is addictive, and anything that's addictive has got to be managed. And we are being encouraged to overload or overdose on dopamine and serotonin by notifications, by messages, by posts. And we need to get our dopamine and serotonin from exercise and walking in the forest, not from a computer. And I'm not saying social media is bad, but you wouldn't spend all your time in the forest and you wouldn't spend all your time exercising. You don't want to spend all your time on social media.
Great point.
To recognize that you have to manage your social media like you manage your food, like you manage your alcohol, like you manage your nicotine, like you manage your exercise, your walking, your running, your cycling, your swimming. That it's got to be managed, because it is so addictive. It is so stimulating, because it's stimulating that dopamine and that serotonin. And it's in our lives, it's there, it's real. Businesses are making millions of dollars out of it, billions of dollars in Facebook's case. And to see it for what it is, not just a little tablet of glass in your hand, but that this, I think, is an addictive product like cigarettes, like beer, like red wine. And therefore, you have to think about how you manage it, because we are pushing it in, almost pushing it into our heads.
Yeah.
And we have to think about how we're managing that. And the reason I want people to watch that show is so they've got some context that, oh, right, so social media is as addictive as cocaine. So I wouldn't consume any of that drug, or social media is addictive as alcohol or nicotine. So if it is as addictive as that, you don't drink too much alcohol, you don't smoke too much, therefore you shouldn't consume too much social media.
One of the challenges, I think, Thomas, that I think would be that with that, and when I've explained this, not in the context that you are for sure, but just having a vague understanding of that, especially watching our kids, they don't know, they don't realize what it's doing until it's one of the things that happens. They get sucked in, and it's interesting to watch that and observe. But for humans, for adult humans, I should say, we see, okay, well, if it's that addictive, how is it so dangerous? Because if you think about it, when you have cigarettes, and if you don't manage that, you do it too much, you get cancer, right? That's like if you drink too much, you get liver failure. If you do too much of the drugs, you have an overdose and you die instantly, all these different things. But what is that, the repercussions that are visible to be seen by humans when it comes down to this addiction of social media, cell phones, things like that? And I think that is what needs to be prominently exposed to people, so they can visually see, hey, this is a repercussions for that. How would you explain that? What are those, parallels to the cancer for smoking and the liver conditions and for drinking when it comes down to this?
You're right. Obviously, smoking can be lung cancer or bladder cancer. Alcohol can be liver cancer or anything in the gut or intestine. But I think with social media, we know it's affecting our mental health.
Yeah.
We know people, particularly say on Instagram, are suffering from what's called in psychology compare and despair. Their life is better than mine, their house is better, their holiday, their car, their looks, their beauty, their hair, whatever it might be. So I think if we look at the long-term effect, we know it's going to affect a loss in self-esteem. We know it's going to affect a loss of confidence, a feeling of isolation, a feeling of loneliness. And these things can lead to depression and obviously, to the worst case, suicide. And so what we don't know is how much of this is linked to social media, because it's too early.
Right.
Depending on how you define the beginning of social media, it's probably about 15 or 20 years old. And in terms of mainstream social media, it's probably only about 5 years old.
Right.
And so we're walking into a decade of mental health issues, which could be as bad as nicotine for cancer or alcohol for livers. We don't know, but what we do know is we're dealing with an addictive drug that's giving us highs in dopamine and highs in serotonin, which we really want to have naturally in the body. And we're now getting stimulated by a machine, by a computer.
Sure.
And you and I are mature professionals. We haven't got time to spend all our lives on social media, but the generation behind us, the little ones, our young kids, they can get badly damaged by it.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing an increased consumption of cannabis throughout the world, and we know too much consumption of that can affect the formation of the brain in the late teens and early 20s, so it doesn't complete, creating forms of psychosis and psychological issues. And when you add all these things together, we're effectively, computers are giving us the same outcome as nicotine and alcohol.
Yeah.
And therefore, if that's true, perhaps these companies are going to have to be taxed as if they are alcohol and nicotine companies in the future.
Wow, that's interesting.
And maybe because alcohol and nicotine is very carefully controlled and taxed throughout the world, perhaps social media companies are heading in that direction too.
That's very, very interesting.
Because we want our children, our youth, to build the next generation of politics, of society, of companies, of church, of philanthropic organizations. We don't want them to be stuck with an issue of global mental health. But I don't think we yet know the damage we've done by having people on computers for 10 to 12 hours a day, be those desktops or mobiles. But
yeah,
when you speak to a lot of children around the world at colleges and schools, there is a lot of isolation, there is a lot of loneliness, there's a lot of issues with self-esteem, with confidence, with compare and despair, and those all lead to the wrong place.
Yeah.
And depression is a very difficult thing to manage. It's present in the young and it's present in the old. It's very difficult to manage. It's a long way through, and we've got an epidemic on our hands potentially in this generation. At the same time, we're increasing pressure on people to be more productive, to sort out climate change, to be perfect with their bodies, and we're putting people under too much pressure.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
My worry is we don't know the outcomes, the mental health outcomes of this technology yet. And I don't think these technology companies have accepted the responsibility that they're walking into.
Right.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. No, I agree. No, I'm with you 1,000%. I'm completely in alignment with you on that, and thank you for that. So, how do people find that safety? Obviously, you gave some examples of physical fitness, eating right. Get out, and there's no question to you, by the way, energizing about being in the woods. We call it the woods, the forest, whatever. Being in the woods, there's just something amazing about it. As you can see behind me, I have an organization called Friends of the Outdoors, which I just love because I love giving people the experience of outdoor activities. There's just something a therapeutic about it for sure. So outside of those things, how else can people feel and create safety in this? Even if we don't even call it an unstable world, it can be unstable. But how about in the unknown trajectory of the world at this point from where we're at? So what are some other ways that you could do that you could recommend people to find that safety, in this current climate that we're in and moving forward?
Okay, so the things you mentioned, Don, the movement, the nature, obviously more exercise, more movement, more time in nature, very careful management of what you consume, eliminate as many recreational drugs that might be in your life as possible, be that nicotine, alcohol, or cannabis.
Yeah.
More emphasis on managing the mind through meditation, through yoga. And I think in terms of technology, being on top of the dopamine and serotonin effect of technology and getting away from it, and having time to yourself alone. And I think being more compassionate to yourself in terms of how you talk to yourself, talk to your own mind, because we are very critical of one another. We're very critical of ourselves. we're very judgmental of ourselves. We're hard on ourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
And we cause stress in our own minds. We cause cortisol rises with our own thoughts in our own heads. And I think we have to be more compassionate to ourselves in our self-talk. And I think self-talk is incredibly powerful. And I also think if you can manage your self-talk and be kinder to yourself, you can lift your own self-esteem and those people around you. And then lastly, I would say find some kind of small intimate group, whether it's one of yours or one of mine or one of Jay Shetty's, or find a small intimate group on Facebook, on WhatsApp, on LinkedIn, whatever platform you like. Physically, if we can't now meet, socially distance, but become part of small intimate groups where you can talk stuff out. As I often hear you say in America, talk shit through.
That's right.
Shoot the breeze, as you like to say in America. I like these phrases. But you can't survive on your own just seeing a shrink, seeing a psychologist, and living in your own mind. You've got to talk things through with your peers. So find a small, intimate, private, closed group where everyone is verified and everyone is qualified, and you feel confident that you're safe there, a safe place, a safe space. And then work very hard on your meditation, your movement, your exercise, your food, your time in nature, because the computers are getting more powerful, and Elon Musk wants to put a Neuralink chip in our head and put us all on the Wi-Fi. So we could be robots by 2030. We have to have a relationship outside of the machines, because the machines are taking us over. Yeah. And I feel like the virus has been sent to us by Mother Earth to say, hey, you guys, there's nearly 8 billion of you. Here's something to wake you all up, just to show you how powerful Mother Earth is. And yes. I feel I'm not a conspiracy theorist that this is some invented virus by some nasty people like James Bond. I think this is a message from Mother Earth saying, wake up. Wake up, think about globalization, think about climate change, think about one another, be more human. And I think belonging to a small intimate group is important, along with all these other things that you rightly mentioned, like time in nature.
I appreciate that, man. That is so good. I couldn't agree with you anymore. Huge thing, and what an honor and blessing it's been for you to be here with us today. Last question I have for you, as you can see here, our show is called Grynd Lyfe on both podcast and YouTube and everywhere, but we spell a little bit differently. As you can see, it's Grynd. You can see behind me, Gryndlyfe, because I believe people need to have a why in their life. And there's people live life two different ways, as you and I talked about before, Thomas. They either live life with an I, where they just get by, which I'm not judging. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody, to each their own. They can live life in the way that they choose. They'll have different passions and different, needs and different things that they would like to accomplish in their life. But I believe that people live life with an I, where they just get by and they do the best they can for where they're at, but they don't have a big mission. They don't have a purpose. They don't have a driving force. And I think the other types of people live life with a why, and that's why I spell it completely different. Why? And then when they find their why, they need to fuel their hustle, or that fuel their daily grind with that same why. Is why that why transfers from life into the grind. What is your why moving forward? Because obviously you've done well. You've been board member and director of many companies. From a financial standpoint, you've done extremely well. You sold companies for big money. You've done well. What is your why now, moving forward, as Thomas Power?
I don't think it's changed, Don. My why is all about connecting people. I work to serve others. I work for my family. I work for my children. I work for their careers. I work for my wife, and they're all seeking connections. Ask Dad. He's bound to know. Ask Dad. Dad knows everyone somewhere. whether it's Auckland, Los Angeles, now New Hope, Bucks County, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where. I can find people anywhere on planet Earth and connect them. So my why is all about connecting people to the things that they're seeking. Everyone, as I say, everyone's seeking information, everyone's seeking contacts, everyone's seeking deals.
Yeah.
I connect people every day around the world on WhatsApp to whatever they're seeking. So my why has always been around connecting people. And going back to the John D. Rockefeller, when you take away all your wealth, when you take away all the assets, the only thing you're left with is your reputation. If when I'm in the ground and my time has passed, people remember me as a connector of people, good enough. Good enough. We connected through. We met. Penny and I have connected people who've got married. I mean, that's a fantastic feeling to introduce people and actually then get married. I mean, that's very special. People who connect and become business partners. People connect and invest in each other's ideas. People connect and become recruits or suppliers or clients or investors. It's a great joy connecting people to the right people. It gives you peace of mind. It gives you self-esteem. It's very rewarding. It gives you serotonin. It gives you dopamine. My why, Don, is connecting people, and I'm honored to be on your show and connect with you and connect with your audience and your followers and your listeners, and for them to connect with me. And so
how can they do that, Thomas? That's finalized. So thank you. By the way, it's been an honor and a privilege for you to be on here. It's been a blessing. We went longer than I think any show that I've ever done because you just, I didn't even realize time flew. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even realize it until I just looked at the clock and I was like, this is incredible. I need to go vote.
You need to chop it down with your edits then, I guess.
Listen, I don't think we need to because it was just chock full and packed full of so much great stuff. It's going to be a longer listen, but people are going to love it. How can they follow you? How can they continue to be blessed by your personal influence? Social
they
media
can. They're welcome to message me on WhatsApp. My number is public worldwide +44 7875 695012. That number is advertised on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. My number is everywhere. You can Google my name and you'll find my WhatsApp number. And they're very welcome to send me a message or ask me for whatever they're looking for. As I say with Jay Shetty, and a lot of people give me credit for Jay Shetty. Is all I do is I show people the map. I know the journey. I know the pain. I know the routes. I know the cities. I know the good cities. I know the bad. I know what's going to go right. I know what's going wrong. I've walked it all, and therefore it's easy to show people a map if you've already done the walk, right?
Absolutely. And then on Twitter and LinkedIn and Twitter.
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I would say on LinkedIn, LinkedIn limit you to 30,000 connections, which I've had since 2004.
Right.
So I've had 16 years of not being able to accept anyone. So I have to delete someone to accept a new person. But I think that's just the limitation of LinkedIn's 30,000 connection limit. But they can follow on
Twitter.
Sorry?
What's your Twitter handle?
It's at Thomas Power, ThomasPower. You'll also find my WhatsApp number published there I'm very accessible. It's my life. I connect people till I die. I'll still be connecting people on my deathbed. Whoever gets my last connection before I hit the dust, that'll be my last one. I'm a little bit like the women the ladies who used to work at the telecommunications, pull one out and connect in, pull one here and connect in.
Yeah, there you go.
That was mainly ladies who did that at AT&T and BT and so on. So yeah, connecting people is my life. That connecting people and networking with people, that is my life.
Well, I appreciate that, man. And thank you for being on. It's been an honor and privilege to have you here. Everybody got tons of information. Guys, follow Thomas. Learn about his business and personal. I follow you on the business's personal a group that you and your wife Penny have, Business is Personal, with Thomas and Penny Power on Facebook. I love that group. There's a lot of great content that's shared through there as well. And but man, it's been a blessing, man. I'm excited to get to know you more and spend some more time connecting and communicating. And I know everybody on here will too. So thanks for being on, my brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Don.